Good morning, friends. Welcome to Morning Tea. I have a friend right now who's going through some significant fears, and it's made me reflect, of course, on fears. I care about this person deeply, and so it can be difficult to watch them go through the pains, I'm going to say, that fears can create. On this person, it might seem subtle, but I think pervasive. And that's often the way that fear works. We can be an otherwise very powerful person in the sense of having developed a lot of awareness, insight, confidence. And yet for most of us, there's going to be places in our life that still trigger fears. And in a way, it's useful because those fears show us where we are weakest, where we are unexamined. At the same time, Rebecca has been practicing kind of a radical positivity lately. And it's interesting for me, being someone who is, I think of myself as fairly empathetic, and emotions can be infectious for me sometimes, much less so than they used to be. I used to be very, very vulnerable to that, but still, it's almost in my imagination like I can feel other people's feelings. And I've been caught between getting sucked into the fears or anxieties that the one person is experiencing, or being sucked into the positivity that Rebecca is brandishing about with great fervor lately. It's hard to look at those places. The fears, by definition, they're places that don't want to be looked at. And they've survived in us this long because we haven't really looked at them or conquered whatever that is or transformed whatever that is. And often they hold something deeper. So I might have, let's say maybe I'm fearful of growing old. And that fear just sits there in the back of my mind and percolates and trickles. But don't kid yourself. It impacts every aspect of your life. And often it takes us out of the moment that we're in and robs us. It's kind of a thief in the night. And then that fear of aging prevents us from, again, loving where we are, loving how we are right now. The fear seems real, inevitable, because all fears, they're not effective unless they convince you that they are real or very likely to come true or even inevitable. And so we have this superficial fear, this fear of aging, but what is it really, what's really under there, I guess is what I'm getting at. Is it really a fear of aging, or is it that we have a self-image that we cling to right now? And anytime that self-image is altered or shifted, we feel uncomfortable. For many of us, it's ego that creates the fear. I mean, probably inevitably for all of us, no matter what our fear is, whether it's getting old or it's getting cancer or it's not having enough money or whatever, it comes back to ego, to being worried about this little shell we've built around us, made up of self-concepts, but also of societal concepts. And just being concerned that something's going to bump into that and break it and shift it. Again, we can use that stoic view and we can say, well, look, your ego self, it is going to get bumped and bruised. In fact, it's going to get probably squashed and destroyed, completely altered. By making nothing safe, sometimes we can learn to surf and we can find safety in uncertainty. You know, Alan Watts wrote a book, The Wisdom of Insecurity, which if we could all find that wisdom of insecurity, we might be in a much better place in our lives. But there's also the flip side. There's that positive side where we can learn to just redirect our mind, because fear is a mind director. It takes our mind and it says, look, there's more wrinkles you see. Look, do you feel sore in your joints? Look, and it tries to continually turn your mind to the thing you fear. Learning the process of putting our mind where we choose to put it. Ideally, this would be a basic thing we'd all learn as kids, but we don't, of course. So here we are as adults having to try to learn this. Getting a little wind, so I'm shifting my microphone. And as adults, it's more difficult. Our minds rule over us often. So how do we get to the place where we're at the helm again? These things are things that our society, our world doesn't pay attention to. In fact, distracts us from. Just says, come watch all this media that will actually lead your mind further into anxiety and fear. What are we going to be? Are we just going to be a puppet of societal creation? Or are we going to create our own culture? Are we going to have that courage to go and say, hey, I'm not satisfied just being a puppet. I want to be able to direct my mind where I ask it to go. If I have a fear, a strong fear, I'm not going to just let it sit there. Usually these fears have been pecking at us for years. When is the moment? And I'd suggest that right now is the moment to shift those fears, to live more courageously and vibrantly, to see that the fears, their power comes in that mind direction. Their power comes in storytelling. Look, Kenton, this, and this. Look, that and that. This could happen. This will happen. This doesn't mean we have to live stupidly. Doesn't mean we have to be foolish. But it does mean that we can believe in ourselves. You know, if I get cancer, I'm going to either die or I'm going to figure my way out through it. I might become a better person from having that experience. It's likely I'm going to grow old and die unless science is going to come up with something really amazing, or I become fully realized and realize that there is no time, aging, or death. The question is, will I live? I guess that's the question. Will we live? Or will we let these fears just peck at us? You probably have some fears. I think almost all of us do. You know somebody that's having some strong fears right now. How do we help them through it? That's tricky, but the things I've spoken about in this video can sometimes help. Because if we just talk to a person about the fear within the context of that fear, then the mind will redirect. And you probably won't get very far with that person because they are convinced that their fear is real and powerful and will overwhelm them. But if we can get at the nature of fear itself, if we can see what's going on behind the scenes, then we can ask that deeper question. Do we want to even have fear be an influence in our life? And if we don't, then maybe instead of just worrying about that fear, we concentrate on fear itself. Share in the comments what you're fearing or experiencing right now in an anxiety way. Or if you've had things like this in the past that you've shifted and transformed, how have you done it? Helping each other out, I think that's key. So please fill those comments up with your wisdom and your insights. We all need each other to be able to navigate this. All right, my friends, thank you for joining me for morning tea. Airplane. You know, one of the fun parts about this is then we have this built-up connection. So when I just glance up and say airplane, maybe you remember something from an earlier morning tea. I guess that's all I'll say. Okay. Love to you all.